Welcome everyone on my channel. In today's episode I would like to speak a little bit more about the first tank, the T-18, which is the first Russian domestically developed tank. Enjoy! 1920s was not the best times for tank building. After the end of World War I, there were major cuts in military spending, and also people have enough of fighting. However, in minds of military men, World War I was a revolutionary war, and all major countries was working on development of new types of tank designs. Soviet Union was one of those countries. First tank adopted into Russian army was Russian Renault, or I should say Ruski Renault, a copy of the Renault FT, which was followed by hero of this episode, the T-18, aka MS-1. Experience from Russian Civil War, which was much more maneuverable than the fronts of World War I, and weak infrastructure in Russia, had a strong influence on the major weight requirement. Those requirements led to a completely new domestic design with some interesting features. At a first glance, MS-1 looks like an Renault FT. However, only similarities between those two were the general concept of light infantry tank and classic architecture. Tank was designed in a classic way, with a driving compartment at the front, followed by the fighting compartment and engine compartment at the back. On the top there was turret with 360 degrees of rotation. In comparison to Renault FT, MS-1 tank was much shorter, primarily due to a very compact engine compartment. Similarly to FT, a tail was added to help the tank cross trenches. The secret of the engine compartment compactness was simple. A special engine was developed at a Bolshevik factory. It was air-cooled, it generated 35 horsepower. Engine was one of the first to be installed perpendicularly. Even more unusually, the engine was joined into one unit with the gearbox, which saved a lot of space. The running gear was also original and a bit unusual, where 6 road wheels and from 2 to 4 return rollers were made from aluminium with rubber rims to reduce weight. Then road wheels were coupled together into bogies with coil springs. All I mentioned before, with front large Renault FT style idler and sprocket wheels at the back, summarizes the suspension. What is worth to mention is that designation MS-1 model and the year that is often used today is wrong. MS-1 tanks were exclusively separated into production batches. There were 4 batches of production with upgrades and modernizations introduced along the way. Initial production tank, the Red Army accepted the T-18 infantry support tank, better known as the MS-1, on July 6, 1927. Many changes were introduced into the T-18 in comparison to the prototype. The front part of the hull was changed to a simpler one-piece casted element that also held the idler mounts. Secondly, the engine compartment was redesigned. However, it is not clearly visible from outside, so from a modeler's perspective, it is not so relevant. Then the suspension was updated after prototype trials. You can see that on looking at the return rollers configuration. Additional thing was elimination of the rigid mudguards. Now they were made from canvas that could be installed and removed very quickly. Next update was small changes to the driver's vision slit. Unlike the T-16 also, the production tank had front and rear lights as well as a horn. This equipment was produced by Bosch and imported from Germany. On turret, instead of an evacuation hatch present on the prototype, a slot for a spare machine gun port was installed. With introduction of second batch on production lines, design changed dual Fyodorov machine guns to new DT machine gun. Another design change was forced. It was observed that ribs of the drive sprocket on nearly all produced tanks began to crack. Steel cast drive sprockets were introduced. At this time, also, solid metal road wheels and return rollers were tested instead of ones with the rubber rims. Third batch of T-18 tanks, around 150 units, was produced on March 7, 1929, where the main modification was the introduction of supercharged engine. The engine would be supercharged to 45 horsepower, making the tank faster. The top speed was expected to rise to 18 km per hour. From the outside, turret received a rear bustle. This was due to the development of the new, more powerful 37mm B3 gun and plans to install a radio. However, the radios were never installed on this type of tank. Improvement list from 3rd series also included cast track links without rivets. The new links were more reliable and had better traction, even receiving the nickname Eagle's Claw. Tanks in the 4th production batch were supposed to receive a reinforced suspension and the 4-speed gearbox. You can clearly see that on the return rollers configuration. There are 4 of them. Again, new 3 types of drive sprockets were tested in November of 1930, and the best one was picked. Another almost unnoticeable but characteristic change was shifting the rear light from right to the left. Because I will be building tank from 4th production batch, I divided the summary into 2 parts. The first one is showing all the changes from the prototype until the 4th production batch. And the second one at the bottom is showing the specific features of 4th production tanks. Lastly, one thing that I was unable to confirm fully are the full metal road wheels and return rollers. In my references, I never saw them on the pictures from the era, but if you are looking at the actual museum T-18 tanks, you can see that all of them have full metal wheels. To build a model of T-18, I will be using the Happy Boss late series tank. And we can clearly see over here a bunch of the features that could be interpreted directly from the picture. The first thing is the latest sprocket wheel from November 1930. Secondly, we have a handle on top of fuel tank, which is too big. Then we have full steel road wheels. And also full steel return rollers, 4 of them per side. We got the light that was moved to the left side of the hull. I saw on the pictures that the rear part of the fender was not rectangular but oval, so this is potentially a mistake. Then at the front we got the idler wheel with additional rubber rim. And that concludes the front picture. Let's go now to the main parts that I have a little bit problem with, and let's review them in detail. The first thing that I want to mention is that the kit have 2 types of sprocket wheels. The earlier one, which looks quite nice, and the second model that was introduced in November 1930. It's also a good one. Then if we look at the bogies, they do not have the reinforcement at the top part, and also at the bottom this part shouldn't be circular in cross section, it should be rectangular, so this is wrong for this model. Then the next thing are the a little bit controversial road wheels, the full steel ones. which I must say that I never saw on the pictures from the era. I still don't know if I will be using them or I will modify them to the aluminum ones. And then we got the return rollers, which are also steel ones. Yeah, I need to think about them. Then at the front, we got the idler, and it looks okay. Also the rims inside, and also from the outside. It looks pretty good with the bolt details on the rim over here on the outside. However, the only problem that I have with them is the lack of the rubber rim outside. Okay. Then the next thing are the fenders. So at the front section, as we know, since prototype, they were changed from the rigid to canvas type. So this part should be removed, I mean the front one. And at the back, they shouldn't be rectangular, they should be a little bit ovalized. But this is a simple thing to correct with a piece of sandpaper. Then the next part is the front casted one-piece part, which basically it should be until this area with the bolt heads installed in those places. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next thing, let's look at the turret. So we have a bustle for the radio and also the side hatch. Yeah, the bustle and the radio over here. Radio never installed. Then the DT machine gun. Yeah, in general it looks nice. Oops. As you can see, the installation of the parts together, it's good, even without too much sanding. So I expect quick build. This part shouldn't be rigid, shouldn't be full plate. It should be only pieces of metal at the top, like on the Renault FT. And then we are going to the main part of the hull. So over here on top of the fuel tank filler ports, we have very big handles. They should be much smaller. Then at the back, we got clear plate without anything. However, over there on the fourth patch, we should have the bulge for the four-speed gearbox. And also on the side, more or less over here, there should be additional shaft for starting of the engine from the outside. Otherwise than that, I think that the model is quite nice. The molding is also really nice. The rivets have different size, so I think it's okay.